So welcome back. I see a lot of familiar names and faces, which is always sweet. And if this is your first time practicing with me, I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for all experience levels of meditation practice. We're doing really fundamental, basic practices rooted in mindfulness and compassion that can support you in starting a practice, re-engaging and getting re-inspired if that's your goal with attending today, or just deepening your practice if you've been practicing for quite a long time. So welcome. A couple of just basic reminders, and then I will talk about today's practice and topic. Take care of yourself. This is a space where you get to choose how you need to use your time and my guided practice. So if anything I'm saying starts to feel like not right or unsafe for whatever reason, I don't expect this will happen, but you can just kind of open your eyes if they're closed, zoom out, notice like where you're making contact with the space around you, and then re-engage as you feel ready. There's always an option to just return to resting with your breath. So noticing your inhales and exhales. But again, I don't expect this will happen. And I encourage you, if we're choosing a sort of challenge or pain point to work with, you don't have to choose the biggest one. You can start small and kind of titrate that, because the training we do in this space can kind of transcend the space and apply to many different aspects of your life. But we start small. I was a ski instructor for many years, and my dad still is. I think he's here today. And there's this saying like, overtrain before you over terrain, meaning like it's okay to stay on the bunny slope for a bit. So yeah, that's that. Today, I wanted to talk about self-compassion and a particular practice in self-compassion, which we'll do in a few minutes here. And I wanted to bring this up because it's been very present in my life lately. This may have happened to you in the past, but I just messed up. I kind of made a mistake on a work project that I've been working on, a research project in particular, and I've been working with a team, and so I felt like I kind of let down the team and I made it more challenging for us. It was an easy mistake to make. I just kind of missed an email. I didn't read it well and didn't send something along to someone I was supposed to a few months ago. So it kind of surfaced, it caught up to me on Friday, and I just felt so badly about it. After processing it most of the day, as I had to continue with my other responsibilities, I realized that the word to describe my experience was brokenhearted, because I just felt this, like this achiness, this tenderness, this sadness, this disappointment. But at the same time, what I didn't feel was the self-critic come up. And so it was this really sweet moment to notice that practicing and teaching and facilitating self-compassion for several years now, it's really taken root. It wasn't so effortful to try to be self-compassionate. It was there already. And one of the signs of that was the first feeling I felt, which was just the brokenheartedness, like my heart sank. And I was able to address it right away, like own my mistake, troubleshoot, what can we do, instead of avoidance, instead of like just feeling anxious and avoiding it. And by the end of the day, I realized in that situation, I would have chosen brokenheartedness over avoidance and anxiety like any day in that situation, because there's movement in it. There's like a flowing, there's movement of the energy, and there can be a movement forward. So it was self-compassion at play, and I worked with it in my practice. I worked with it just throughout the whole day. And yeah, I wanted to share that because it was, again, a clear example of like self-compassion at work as opposed to the self-critic. I imagine if self-critic had come up, I would have felt just so frozen and isolated and like avoided it. Or I don't know, maybe you've been in a situation where you frantically try to find a way to like put the responsibility or ownership of the mistake on someone else. Like, how can I create a story or narrative that makes me not the one at fault? And this is a very human thing to do. But self-compassion, I think, is the practice that helped me approach this differently than maybe I would have 5 or 10 years ago. So self-compassion, we're going to be working with 3 pillars of this. And these were developed, conceptualized by a counseling psychologist and researcher named Kristen Neff. And these pillars are mindfulness versus over-identification, a sense of shared common humanity versus isolation, and self-kindness versus self-criticism. So when we're able to lean into those things, mindfulness, a sense of shared common humanity with what we're dealing with, and self-kindness, we get this formula for self-compassion. And this can be done in just 5 minutes in the middle of the day. It can be done as a formal practice, which we'll do today, like more like 10 or 15 minutes. And it can be a good reminder for situations in which maybe you make a mistake, or maybe you notice the self-critic coming up, or you just notice that things have been challenging in life and you need a little bit of relief, a little bit of release. And maybe that means leaning into the brokenheartedness, but this facilitates movement of the energy again, like out of that sort of contracted, stuck, maybe frozen state and into something that can flow. Self-compassion in a nutshell, it's the compassion, kindness you would give a good friend if they were really suffering or dealing with something challenging. You turn that back on yourself and give it to yourself. Sometimes I offer folks, like in terms of a felt sense of what compassion can feel like. If you think of a human in your life who feels more or less like uncomplicated to love, like easy to love, or even a pet, if you have a beloved pet, it can come even more clearly in this situation. And you see that they're hurting. I'm thinking of like a dog who hurts their paw, or a cat that's like not eating for some reason. Or if it's a human, you know, a child, or partner or good friend who got some hard news, or maybe they made a mistake at work and they're beating themselves up. It's that like feeling of opening one's heart and actually wanting to lean in. It's the empathizing, being aware of their suffering, but also having this internal movement to relieve that suffering. So that's the sort of resonance of the feeling that we're going for, and doing that with ourselves. Yeah. And that's that. It's 10 minutes past the hour, so we're right on time. And let's go ahead and get started. I will start and end the practice with a bell. So go ahead and get comfortable. Choose a position that feels like it will facilitate some relaxation and comfort, but also a sort of awakeness and awareness. And we'll go ahead and get started. So allowing the sound of the bell and the silence, the stillness that follows, to invite you into a space of rest. Rest for your body, rest for your mind. Allowing the eyelids to rest closed if that feels comfortable for you. Otherwise, just resting, a soft gaze someplace in front of you. Maybe not focusing on anything in particular. Becoming aware of your breathing body. You might notice sensation of touch. So where your body meets the surface that's supporting you, perhaps through your feet, your legs, your sits bones, maybe even at your back, your spine, the shoulder blades. Noticing the temperature of the air around you. These are all ways to just make contact with yourself in this moment, with your body and your being in this moment. There might be spaces of contraction or tension in your body. This can happen particularly around the head and neck. So inviting softness to those spaces, the jaw, the cheeks, that space between your eyebrows where you might furrow the brow in an effort to focus. What would it be like to soften these spaces? Dropping a bit more deeply into the presence of this moment. We notice our breath, our breathing, with no need to shift or change anything. Perhaps noticing that coolness of the inhale as it enters your nostrils, and the warmth of the exhale, the softening, the letting go. And from this space of caring, present awareness, go ahead and invite into that awareness, into your mind, your heart, something that's felt difficult for you lately, something that's been a source of pain or suffering. Again, it doesn't need to be the biggest thing unless you feel that's really what you want to be working with and you feel resourced to work with it. You're welcome to, of course, in this space. It could be a mistake that you've made, something challenging at work or in a relationship. Maybe something quite internal to your experience, like a self-doubt or worry or self-criticism, a thought that hasn't been particularly helpful. And this is the pillar of mindfulness versus over-identification. So we just become mindful of it by inviting this thing into our awareness, noticing it. With curiosity and care, noticing how it's shown up in our life. Maybe the body, daily activity, our relationships. It's this moment to open to, like, wow, yeah, this has been impacting me. We get to relate with the suffering, the pain point, the tension with more conscious awareness and presence than perhaps we typically do. We give it space. You might notice, yeah, what else it might be connected to in your life, the patterns of how it shows up, when, where. Or it might feel like enough for you in this moment to just hold it in this sense of soft, caring presence. Just being mindful that, yeah, that suffering has been present, it's been here. A relief to not try to suppress it in this moment. Perhaps there's a softening in the area of your heart, your chest, a softening into a sort of tender presence, even a brokenheartedness. And then we bring in this quality of shared common humanity versus isolation. So, really noticing and leaning into this experience of pain or challenge or suffering as something that brings us into the human family, something we all experience, that we're not the only ones. That some experience of not wanting to suffer and really wanting to be happy is present for the billions of humans on this planet and also other sentient beings. You might even notice or become aware of like other people you know in your life who have experienced something similar, or perhaps you can imagine folks who have experienced a similar sort of pain or suffering. People who would like to quiet and overcome that self-critic, or people who are brokenhearted over making a mistake or feel challenges in relationships, whatever it is. Allowing for that felt sense of connection, or at least the awareness of it, our shared common humanity. And then knowing that we all experience the suffering in our own way, that we share that similarity with each other, that experience. What might it be like to lean into self-kindness as opposed to self-criticism? To be kind toward ourselves in this tender space. That might feel like placing a hand at heart center, feeling the actual warmth of your own palm to support a sort of emotional, energetic warmth towards yourself, care toward yourself. Perhaps it's something that you really need to hear or receive from yourself through kind words like, I know this is hard. I'm here for you. We're going to make it through this. I'm here and I care. Any words of affirmation or loving kindness that are coming up. Even I feel you. I know this is hard. Things like this, just to acknowledge a kind and caring presence with yourself. A soothing, a nurturing. Perhaps it's reassurance, reconnection, creating a safe space for yourself to be imperfect, and letting any words or gestures that arise to soothe yourself be like a medicinal balm for the wound, offering healing, support. Softening the degree of pain or suffering just by being there. If you experience any resistance to this in this step of the process, what might it be like to be tender toward that resistance? To just soften toward it. Maybe have compassion for yourself, that there is resistance to self-kindness. Whatever's arising, when we approach it with compassion, it creates space and acceptance, and also a sense of soothing, making space for deeper connection with ourselves in a kind, loving way. Taking a few more moments here. And then repeating your words of loving kindness or affirmation a final time, or giving yourself a hug, pressing hand to heart center maybe a little bit more firmly to help seal this practice. Taking a moment to notice any gratitude or rejoicing for having deepened into this practice, given yourself this time and space for loving kindness and compassion, relating with yourself in this way. And then at the sound of the bell, just gently making your way back to our shared space so we can connect all once more, eyes open, relationally, before we continue with our days. So taking your time to come back, if you need to kind of come back the way we came, just noticing the physical space around you, maybe your soundscape. You don't have to make a categorical shift out of the practice, like into waking life. You get to soften into it. Yeah, even like loving kindness as an opportunity to allow yourself to feel sad. Yeah, this is like, it's so fascinating, in the Buddhist framework of like mind and life. Suffering is like, it's a very normal part of life. Like it is just a part of things. And I think culturally, I've found, at least in the sort of culture I grew up in here in the United States, there's a constant sort of drive toward be happy and like, yeah, pursue your happiness and personal growth and all of these things. And I think sometimes we don't offer enough attention to allowing ourselves the full gradient of the human experience and allowing that to be okay. Like feeling sad. I mean, it's okay. It doesn't make us bad or like we're doing life wrong. And I think compassion and loving kindness can be an opportunity to feel into that in a safer way.